Okay, so intergenerational trauma. That's something that goes back to boarding school days. When Europeans first came to what's now the United States, they were trying to figure ways to conquer the people in the land. They unsuccessfully tried to do that by one example is what's called the Dakota 38 plus 2. It was the largest mass execution in U.S. history. They hung 38 Dakota holy men, plus an additional two the next day, thinking that if they eliminated the spiritual leadership, that would destroy the people's will. Well, that didn't work, so they focused more on boarding schools. Boarding schools were made to raise Indian children to live, think, learn, act white. They cut their hair. They were no longer permitted to speak their language. They had to assume a Christian name. They had to learn Christianity. They had to wear shoes, wear white clothes. And they stayed at the boarding schools until they either ran away or they graduated. And then they eventually went back to their people. And when they did, they no longer knew how to hunt. They no longer knew their language. They didn't know any traditional ways. They didn't know anything about being Indian. All they knew about was how to be white, which didn't fit in with their people anymore. So they were angry. They were frustrated. The things bad that had happened to them at the boarding schools, the physical abuse, the verbal abuse, the sexual assaults, all these horrible, hateful things. So they've got all this anger in them. So they started acting out with their own people, their nieces, their nephews, their own children when they got married. They sexually assaulted them, domestic violence occurred, all these negative behaviors, which was unfamiliar to Indian people. Um, so as they had children, these things got passed down generation to generation. The only thing that would numb the hurt and the pain was alcohol, which later became drugs. Um, and that has all the way up to current day. Um, we also believe, and there's research to support the theory, that it's also in DNA. Um, so that has a lot to do with why a lot of Indian people and African American people have um, anger, frustrations, depression, these things, these feelings that they don't understand. So that's something that I focus on pretty heavily. If someone has these feelings and emotions that they don't understand, we'll do a little research, we'll do a little genealogy, find out, where your parents or grandparents were in the boarding school, where were they in a boarding school, try to get a little information what happened to them, and see if that has any bearing on some of their substance abuse issues, their anger issues, their sexual abuse history. Much of that ties in together.
Thank you.